Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our video lecture number 8. We are now in our course, Accounting Information Systems, and this is your professor, Danny Araneta Cabulay. If you have not yet subscribed to this channel, please hit subscribe and the notification button so you will always get alerts on latest updates. So let's get on with today's lecture. So for video lecture number 8, which is chapter 5, part 1, we will be talking about the expenditure cycle, purchases, and cash disbursements procedure. In this chapter, we hope that you will be learning several topics and achieve the following objectives: that you'll be able to be aware of the fundamental tasks performed during purchases and cash disbursements processes. Be aware of functional areas involved in purchases and cash disbursements and the flow of these transactions through the organization. That you will be familiarizing yourselves with documents, journals, and accounts that provide full audit trails, promote the maintenance of records, and support decision making and financial reporting. And you'll be aware also of the risk associated with purchases and cash disbursements activities and the controls that reduce this risk. And finally, I hope that you'll also learn the operational features and control implications of technology used in purchases and cash disbursement systems. So if we look at the cycle, the procurement cycle, which is a subsystem of the expenditure cycle, we start with purchases. Di ba pag tayo'y bumibili ng mga bagay para sa ating kumpanya, we place a requisition. And then, if the requisition is approved, you're making a request, then you start to canvass. Try to find out who are the best suppliers who could provide your needs. Then once you've chosen a particular supplier with the specification on the products you want to purchase, then you now execute another document called the purchase order. So once you have the purchase order in place or submitted to your preferred vendor, then the vendor begins to, pack everything that will be delivered to your doorstep. So once the materials that you ordered are delivered, then you receive them and you issue a receiving report, okay? Then the supplier issues a delivery receipt. In most cases, they will also issue an invoice together with the delivery receipt, especially if this is a cash on delivery basis. However, in most cases, companies have a credit line. So they will issue you an invoice and there are credit terms. Maybe 10 days, you're given 10 days to pay, or maybe 30 days at most. So it's very important that you inspect the materials that you receive, because sometimes if the materials are not what you actually ordered, or the standard are below par, you can always return them. You only receive what you want to receive, and you make sure that you record it in the books. Of course, if everything is in order, what's in the invoice is automatically received. But if there are rejects or items that you want to return back to the seller or to the supplier, then you can return them, because you're only going to pay what you want to pay for. Okay? So that will now comprise your accounts receivable. Kung ano lang yung natanggap mo, yun lang ang babayaran mo. Okay? So items that you return to the vendor are not included in your accounts payable. Unless that you receive everything and then suddenly in the warehouse you discovered some are defective and then you return them later on, then you have to reverse your accounts receivable. Okay? The normal balance of accounts receivable is credit. Then to reverse that, you have to debit that to reduce your accountability or liability to the vendor. Then, when you're about to pay the vendor based on your balance, you now issue a check, no, to pay your accounts payable. So of course, it's going to be a debit accounts payable, credit cash. Okay? Now, what are the goals of the expenditure cycle? The goal of providing needed resources to the organization can be broken down into several objectives. First, purchase from reliable vendors. Kaya tayo nagka-canvas. Purchase high-quality items. That's why we screen and we sometimes nagpapapunta pa tayo ng supplier ng mga samples, di ba? We have to inspect the samples. So if the samples are what we really need, especially if we're purchasing a large volume of items, you need to see the sample first. Obtain the best possible price. That's where negotiation comes in. Then you purchase only items that are properly authorized, have resources available when they are needed, receive only those that you ordered. The excess, you need to return them back, or those that you're rejecting. Ensure items are not lost, stolen, or broken. And finally, pay for the items in a timely manner. Okay? Now, so if you look at the purchase system, no, the flow chart is a little bit complicated, but you start with the supplier on to the stores, no. So the receiving end would be your warehouse. Now, the accounts payable purchase system begins in inventory control when inventory levels drop to reorder levels. A purchase requisition (PR) is prepared and copies to be sent to purchasing and accounts payable. Purchasing prepares a purchase order or PO for each vendor and sends copies to inventory control, and then you record the accounts payable and then the receiving. Now, upon receipt, receiving accounts inspects the goods. A blind copy of the PO is used to force workers to count the goods. So you need to count. Ko-compare mo yung nakalagay sa PO 120 boxes. 120 boxes nga ba yung dineliver? Okay? A receiving report is prepared and copies sent to the raw materials storeroom, purchasing, inventory control, and accounts payable. Paano kung magkaiba yung nakalagay sa PO dun sa nabilang mo? You have to note the discrepancy because you only pay for what you ordered. So therefore, you ordered 120 boxes, for example. Ang dumating 121 boxes. So you need to return one box. You're not gonna pay for that. What if you receive less? For example, 120 boxes ang in-order mo, pero ang dumating 119. So you only note that you receive 119. You have to correct the PO. Okay? So that means you pay only for 119 boxes. Okay? Now, notice the formula for economic order quantity. So this is the point in which a particular item needs to be reordered kasi kailangan siya sa production. Okay? So I'm showing you the formula so you can actually practice in some exercises. You should have learned that in previous courses. Okay? Accounts payable periodically summarizes the entries in the purchases journal as a journal voucher which is sent to the general ledger department. So inventory control or purchases is debited and then accounts payable is credited. Accounts payable also prepares a cash disbursement voucher and posts it in the voucher register. Now, in the general ledger clerk would post from the accounts payable journal voucher to the general ledger. Then you reconcile the inventory amount with the account summary received from inventory control. So you will notice the very complex flow, no, based on the flow chart that is shown in slide number 11. On to slide number 12. Okay? Now, the cash disbursement system, periodically, accounts payable searches the open vouchers payable file for items with payments due. Accounts payable sends the voucher and supporting documents to cash disbursement. Accounts payable updates the accounts payable subsidiary ledger. That means, pag sinabi natin accounts payable, that's the account, no? But there are subsidiary ledgers under that, depending on the supplier. So, each supplier is a subsidiary ledger account, okay? So, if you have about 25 suppliers, then you have 25 subsidiary ledgers. Now, on to cash disbursement. You need to prepare the check, record the information in the check register or the cash disbursements journal, returns paid vouchers to accounts payable, mails the check to the supplier, and then you send a journal voucher to general ledger with the following entries: debit accounts payable and credit cash. So yan na yung pagbinayaran mo na, yung iyong utang, yung iyong supplier. Now, for the General Ledger Department, they receive the journal voucher from cash disbursements, a summary of accounts payable subsidiary ledger from accounts payable. The journal voucher is used to update the general ledger. The accounts payable account control is reconciled with the subsidiary summary. And then you see the very detailed flowchart in page 16. So you notice that there's a lot of forms to be used. Now, here is the question I want you to answer at the end of this video. For video lecture number 8, take note, defective materials purchased were returned to the supplier. So that's the case. Differentiate, how would you record in the books these returned items if A, they have been recorded already in the books as purchases versus if they have not yet been recorded in the books. Ano ba yung pinagkaiba ng pagre-record niya? If you wish, you can show me the journal entries, no, to correct or to rectify, no, when you return the items for return. Now, I want you to also discuss briefly the role of quality control at the point of purchasing inventories for a plant or store. So ano ba yung mga internal control, quality controls na kailangan kapag tayo ay bumibili ng mga materyales for production? Enumerate them. Okay? So I'll see you in video lecture number 9.